Hello, hello. It's time for another foundation roundup. I have 5 new foundations to review and give you my thoughts on. Some are new releases and there are a couple of reformulations here. I'll show you how they apply, what they look like, and how they wear, and my experiences with each, as well as what skin types I think would benefit the most from each foundation. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new. I test out a lot of foundations, concealers, primers, powders, and other face products here on my channel because I am in my mid to upper 40s now, and as we age it just gets harder and harder to find the right products. So let's get into these 5 foundations that I've been testing and see what I think and if they may work for you. Even though I share what skin types I think would benefit the most from each foundation, it's important you know my skin type and climate before I get into these reviews. I have combination skin that can be normal and sometimes dry around the perimeter, and I can get some oil and shine breakthrough in the center of my face, possibly due to the extremely humid climate I live in year-round here in New Orleans, which is also extremely hot right now and the majority of the year. So when it comes to longevity and foundations, I have a lot of experience with that. It's a challenge to keep foundations looking good all day long in my climate. I don't do first impressions. I always test foundations out for several days using different methods, different primers using no primer, and I do need to set my face with powder. You may not need to, but I do. I will have everything I'm sharing today, what I'm wearing, and the usual primers and powders I use to test listed and linked down in my description box. So let's get started with a reformulation from Lancome. This is the Lancome Teint Idole Ultra Wear Matte Foundation. This is a favorite foundation for a lot of people, and I know there is some concern with it being reformulated. There are so many reformulations going on right now. So this retails for $57 for 1 ounce. There are 50 shades. I am in shade 320C. This is supposed to be ultra long wearing for up to 24 hours and be waterproof, sweat proof, and to give full natural matte coverage and remain breathable and lightweight. It's also packed with skin loving ingredients. The texture is thin. It applies quickly and easily. My preferred method is with a damp sponge, which is pretty normal for foundations of this type. I would say this gives medium to medium full coverage that evens out my skin nicely and gives a nice natural finish. I wouldn't say it's overly matte. It's just a nice soft natural finish. After I apply it, it feels lightweight on my skin. I do notice a slight sunscreen scent upon application that does dissipate. Now, I don't know if it's the skin loving ingredients that are in this or what, but after a few hours, I get some shine breakthrough and some texture starts to show that wasn't there at the beginning of the day when it looked really pretty and my pores looked all smooth. I cannot for the life of me find my midday picture of this, but I have one from around 9 hours where you can see that, plus how my makeup just starts to fade through the day. And this happens no matter if I wear a primer or not. My skin just does not seem to hold onto this foundation like it did the original formulation. Unfortunately, I've tried several times and it's okay for just a few hours and then it just doesn't sit the same way. I really wish it did because I enjoyed the original formulation quite a bit, which, you know, does tend to happen with a lot of these reformulations. I have one other reformulation to share that I know a lot of people are concerned with that was actually a holy grail foundation for me. Now, this did look really pretty when I first applied it, so who would I recommend this for? For me, I think the issue stems from it getting shiny, which is weird for a matte foundation. If you have normal to dry skin, this may work much better for you, and if you're maybe in a less humid environment. But this reformulation was a little disappointing for me. This is a foundation I almost completely overlooked for a couple of reasons, but I had a few of you who loved it and you wanted to see what I thought, and I had a lot of you who just wanted me to test it so I could give you my perspective so you could see if you wanted to buy it, which, I mean, that's what I do. So why was I overlooking it? I don't know. So this is the Guerlain Terracotta Le Tint Healthy Glow Foundation, which you would think is this super luxury foundation. I guess technically it is, but when you look at the price of Lancome being $57 for 1 ounce and this being $62 for 1.2 ounces, they're not that far off from one another. There are 30 shades. I'm shade 2.5 in. Now, part of the reason why I almost didn't look at this is because it's described as a liquid to powder formulation, and I don't typically get a along with those. So keep listening if you also don't like those typically. This liquid to powder formulation is supposed to give you a glowy, luminous matte finish that lasts for up to 24 hours. And it's supposed to give you the lightness of a powder, but the perfecting power of a fluid for this seamless finish, which it's kind of intriguing if you think about it. Another reason why I almost didn't get it is because I saw in the description self-adaptable shimmer, and when I see shimmer, I get a little scared off, especially after trying the Makeup by Mario foundation where I saw that shimmer on my face. I didn't like it. Trust me on this, hear me out. This has argan oil. It's supposed to provide lasting comfort and hydration, and gem tone, which is that self-adaptable shimmer that helps the foundation adjust to all skin tones. Don't know how that works, but apparently it's some kind of magic. It's also cruelty-free. I would say the texture of this is not too runny, not too thick. It's just somewhere in the middle. I have some puffy eyes in these application clips. It was early morning and that's just what we have. This applies very easily and quickly. I prefer applying it with a sponge, either damp or dry, depending on the coverage level that I want. I would say this gives medium to medium full skin-like coverage. This is very blurring and smoothing when you apply it to your skin, and it feels very lightweight. I noticed a faint, expensive scent. Do you know what I'm talking about? Right when I start applying it, I don't notice it after my makeup is applied though. And what I notice about this finish is that it is kind of a light reflective finish without sparkle and without being a typical dewy finish. Luminous matte is actually a perfect descriptor. It gives me a glow without making me feel like I'm shiny or greasy or too dewy, especially in my T-zone, which can be an issue with my skin type. This wears beautifully, which I was not expecting, especially in heat and humidity. The clips you're seeing are from a day when I'm not wearing a primer. It was extremely hot and humid. I think it had just rained, and so it was steamy and super hot. And I do get a little bit of shine on a really hot, humid day like this one and have to do some minimal blotting here and there on a long day, but it doesn't disturb my makeup at all. My makeup stays intact. I've just been so impressed with how pretty my skin looks when I wear this with or without a primer. Now, if I wear a primer underneath, I get less shine during the day, but I really do like the finish without a primer, and it wears so well without one. I just don't always feel the need for one. This is such a pretty luminous foundation without looking wet luminous. I can't get over how much I'm enjoying this foundation. I think it could work for anyone of any age with any skin type, and I almost didn't even try it. I'm so glad that I did. Thank you for recommending it to me. You knew I would like it, and you were right. This is living in my vanity. I can't stop reaching for it day to day. It's a great foundation. Next up is the reformulation of one of my holy grail foundations that I know a lot of you are curious about because it's also one of your favorite foundations. This is Dior Backstage Face and Body, the reformulation. So this retails for $43 for 1.7 ounces, which is a lot of foundation for the money. That's always been a positive about this foundation. There are 43 shades. I am in shade 2N. So this new formulation is supposed to be a hydrating foundation that gives you medium buildable natural coverage, that evens skin, blurs perfections, and gives you a luminous makeup look, and it's supposed to resist heat and humidity and be really versatile to give you a no makeup look all the way to a perfected makeup look. It's got squalane, hyaluronic acid, and of course, as the newly reformulated Dior products do, it has 94% natural origin ingredients. This one does have less of a fragrance than the original. I know that's going to be a positive for many of you. This has a runny texture, just like the original, that blends out very, very easily and seamlessly, but I definitely noticed a difference right away with application. When you applied that original version to your skin, it almost fuses with your skin and melts right into it. No matter if you apply it minimally to give a sheer look or build it, it disappears and fuses with your skin and almost makes your pores disappear immediately. It's kind of magical that way. This just applies like a medium coverage foundation, although it's still applied very nicely. It just didn't have that magical pore disappearing, fusing ability of the original. Now, the original also had this amazing versatile coverage and finish in that you could apply it very sheer or almost get close to full coverage from it because of how it evened out your skin beautifully and covered so well while remaining super, super sheer and skin-like. It just didn't look like you're wearing foundation, even if you built it up. So that was the coverage versatility. Now with finish, it just was able to be customized to whatever primer you put underneath it really well. And if you wore no primer, it just gave a really lovely natural finish, yet it seemed to absorb oil really well in the T-zone without making me feel dry somehow. So if I wore a luminous primer, I got a nice luminous look without ever being greasy. If I wore a mattifying primer, I stayed matte longer. Everything just looked really natural and beautiful. It was very customizable. A lot of makeup artists kept it in their kits for good reason. I would say the coverage of this new version is pretty much solid medium, just as the description says. It's not as versatile as the original. Before setting my face on this day, I had a nice smoothing mattifying primer on, and I feel like my skin looks hydrated, but you can see the texture even with that primer underneath. There's not much smoothing going on. Instead of working cohesively with whatever primer I put underneath it, it just kind of does what it wants to do. I get shiny with this about 5 or 6 hours in, and without a primer, my texture is even more pronounced and I get shiny even quicker. This one is definitely more hydrating, and it just doesn't do that magical pore diffusing, pore erasing thing that the original did. Now, even though I get shine, my makeup doesn't seem to break down, so at least there is some longevity there. But there is something in this new version that is making me react. After testing it out for a few days, you can see in these clips, I was fighting some kind of reaction that was giving me bumps on my face for a few days after, which just goes to show that natural origin ingredients aren't always better. I actually have another foundation in this video that I find to be more similar to the original Dior Backstage Face and Body than this. I would say that this is a fine, basic, medium coverage foundation for my skin type and my climate, and it may be because of how they formulated it to be more hydrating. I can do some hydrating foundations, but for some reason this one just isn't doing it for me, and I really wanted it to because I love that original formulation. Now, if you have normal to dry skin, if you're maybe under 40 and don't have as much texture, this may work for you. If you have oily combination skin and don't live in humidity, this could work for you. So there are people that this may work really nicely for. Unfortunately, it just wasn't me. I need to get something off my chest about these product reformulations. It's driving me crazy. When a brand labels a product as a reformulation, but then changes so much about the product, about the ingredient list, that it's nowhere near the same, that's not a reformulation. That's an entirely new product. It makes more sense, and it would be so much less disappointing to consumers if brands would just discontinue these beloved products, these best sellers, and launch completely new products with different names. Yes, it would sting at first to lose a longtime favorite product and to have to find something new, but at least this way we won't have false hope that we're getting a remotely similar product from the reformulation, because 90% of the time the reformulation has a completely different ingredient list, making it a different product entirely. I know the beauty industry gets a lot of scrutiny because of a few bad eggs, but this is when I feel like overall it's beneficial to have us out here testing these products to tell you what's really going on with these reformulations, to be the guinea pigs, the modern day beauty editors, whatever you want to call it, because otherwise you just have the glossy magazines or the online magazines telling you the latest and greatest was the thing to get, when that's really not the case. And you can have some kind of alternatives or something, because I don't know how you feel, but I feel that probably 97% of the reformulations should just be brand new products entirely. I've been disappointed by almost every single one. Now that that rant is over, let's talk about another foundation that I almost didn't get, but had so many of you asking about it. Here we are. This is the Too Faced Born This Way Healthy Glow Moisturizing Foundation. This is in a huge bottle. This is 2.03 ounces that you get for $42. Now, because it's a skin tint and each shade spans several levels, several tones. There are 18 shades. I am in shade Warm Nude. Yes, Warm Nude. This is a vegan, cruelty-free, oil-free serum foundation with SPF 30 that's supposed to give medium natural coverage and last up to 24 hours and hydrate to give you healthy, glowing skin. Now, the sunscreen is a combination mineral and physical. It's got titanium dioxide and zinc oxide and octinoxate. I have very sensitive skin and rosacea, and anytime there's a chemical sunscreen, I'm always skeptical because I typically will break out or react in some way. I've done very, very well with this. I've had no issues whatsoever, and I've worn it a lot. You do need to shake this up because it is a serum foundation. I mean, I always advise shaking any foundation, but you definitely need to shake this one. It has a very runny texture. The shade I have has a pretty strong yellow undertone. I could definitely go more neutral. That's just a side note if you think you're my foundation shade match twin. And if you do think that I might be your foundation match, I have light, medium, neutral leaning warm skin tone. I do have a complete foundation shade match list over on my blog. It's linked down below in my description box. I like that they give instructions for applying this with any method you want to use. You don't see that all the time. I feel like you usually see specific methods. I, of course, prefer to apply this with a damp or a dry sponge. I feel like it's more smoothing like this. It never accentuates any dryness that brushes can sometimes pick up, and it never streaks or anything like that. Now, this can set pretty quickly, so I do prefer to apply this in sections in light layers, as I do pretty often actually. I'll just apply some to one section, move on to another, and so forth. I do have a video on that. I'll link it right below this foundation. It's actually for another foundation, but the method is there. I would say this gives light to medium coverage, definitely more than a traditional skin tint. It's very smoothing on my pores and very skin-like and feels very lightweight. I notice a very, did I say very? Faint sunscreen smell in the background as I apply it. Actually, only right on my lower half of my face as I apply it, and it's gone pretty quickly. I don't notice it sticking around at all. I actually think that this foundation is misnamed. It's called Healthy Glow, but this to me gives more of a natural soft matte finish. And I think foundations like this are really nice for those of us with mature skin because, you know, you go too matte and it just doesn't quite sit right sometimes. However, I don't find this to be overly mattifying or make my dry areas feel drier during the day. Now, there was a day when I wore this and I had kind of a reaction going on from like a skincare product or something, and I didn't really love it on that dry area that particular day. But if I have normal areas and of course oily or shiny areas, it's been just beautiful, and it lasts beautifully throughout the day too. I can go a long day with this and it doesn't break down. I don't have to blot, but maybe like once or twice on a hot, humid day, which is really good. Now, this is the foundation I was referring to when I referred to one being closer to Dior Backstage Face and Body than the new reformulation. It smooths my pores, it controls my oil during the day, it looks like skin, it lasts a long time, it just is a really beautiful foundation. Now, the difference, I guess, is that I don't think dry skin will particularly love it, which is why I think the name is interesting, Healthy Glow. I think this could be named Soft Matte Foundation. That name might scare people away though, because it's not overly matte. I think if you have normal to oily skin, you could really like this because of the soft matte natural finish and how flattering it is. I mean, the bottle is pretty much the same and you actually get more for your money. This was another surprise hit for me. BareMinerals Complexion Rescue Natural Matte Tinted Moisturizer has been out for a little bit. It's an extension of their Complexion Rescue line. I've actually been meaning to put this in a video for a while now, but it kept getting bumped for other newer, shinier foundations. But I need to review it for you because I have some thoughts. This is $37 for 1.18 ounces. It comes in the same 20 shades as the original, and the shade I have here is Ginger. This is vegan and cruelty-free and is supposed to control shine for up to 12 hours and give a natural matte finish, an even skin tone, and blur perfections while allowing you to build it from sheer to light coverage. And they say that this is appropriate for sensitive sensitive and acne prone skin and is good for normal to oily skin. You're supposed to shake this well, and this has a thick, moussey texture to it. They say to apply this with your fingers or a brush, and I have used basically every method under the sun to apply this product. I've used my fingers, I've used a brush, I've used a damp sponge, I've used a dry sponge. I've started with a brush and then moved to a sponge. I've started with my fingers and moved to a brush and moved to a sponge. I've used every type of skincare, every type of primer. I feel like you name it and I've done it so that it would apply and set down the way it's supposed to. I find that this can appear streaky, and so I do need to, no matter what I'm doing, finish it off by tapping a sponge over it. Now, just like the regular Complexion Rescue, I find applying a minimal amount of this to be the best thing. This is really designed to just barely even out your skin tone and give you kind of that no makeup look. And I find that this just does not build well on top of itself. It kind of lifts up if I try to build it. It feels very lightweight on my skin, and while it's much less dewy than the original Complexion Rescue, I wouldn't necessarily call this matte, at least not on my skin. I didn't find this to be a true matte finish, which I always find interesting when products have matte in their name. I did try it over mattifying primers and it just does not, at least not for me, apply well over them. I would say it's more of a natural skin-like finish, but not really in a blurring, flattering way. It simply ever so slightly evens my skin tone. It kind of seems to sit on top of my skin in some areas and emphasize texture and dryness and dehydrated areas sometimes, although it does feel very lightweight on my skin. It does feel like I'm wearing nothing. Now, you would think, because I probably tested this sporadically no less than 10 to 12 days, that I would have some kind of middle or end of day pictures for you. I don't, because I kept needing to go places. Every day I would start to do a test, and this always looked so bad. I kept having to wash it off and start my makeup over on those days. But what I can tell you is that that was several hours in, and what little coverage I already had already begun to fade by that point. So there's barely any coverage anyway. So you wouldn't have really seen anything. Basically, I kept trying and kept trying and kept failing and kept failing over and over and over. And I finally decided, you know what? If I'm not getting to that midday picture and I'm not getting where I want to be anyway, this is just a big fail for me. I would definitely 100% not recommend this for dry skin, because there's regular Complexion Rescue, which is so much better. Maybe if you have normal to oily skin and have minimal texture and just don't have much to even out. But I can think of products that would do this slight evening out so much better and are so much less trouble to apply. I'll put some of my other options that I love down below. This kind of takes the cake for number of tries and fails and just overall disappointment from a brand I really like too. I have loads of foundation roundups and reviews. If you want to see more, be sure to click here and let me know other foundations you want me to test. I learned about 2 of these favorites from you. Let me know those in the comments down below, and be on the lookout for an upcoming concealer roundup. I'm testing and working on one right now. Be sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. I hope you enjoyed this and found it helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.